So today I'm joined by a very special guest, Rob Moore. Rob is known as the Disruptive Entrepreneur. He's got 17 books to his name, many bestsellers, and we're going to touch on a couple of those today. He owns and manages about 1,000 properties. He's got his own podcast, The Disruptive Entrepreneur, which I highly recommend you check out if you haven't already. He's a double public world record holder, and he is also a RISE board member on the Prince's Trust, and he has his own foundation to help young and underprivileged people. And it's my privilege to have him on my podcast today. So the question is this: how do entrepreneurs like us, who don't have an endless supply of cash, how do we leverage the best apps, virtual assistants, automation tools, and systems to scale our businesses, increase our profits, and have more time to do what we love to do each day? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answer. My name's Dr. Steve Day, and this is Systemize Your Success. So I want to actually start off with a story about how I really first got introduced to the world of you, Rob, and how we sort of met, so to speak. And that'll sort of explain why I'm so honored to actually have you on this show. And to do that, I need to go back to 2016. I just decided to quit my job as a doctor, and I was getting back into the world of business. And I can't remember how, but Life Leverage popped into my Audible recommended lists. I think I was probably searching for business books. And I remember I was reading it when I was walking around the north of Sweden. I remember it quite clearly. And it was one of those life-changing moments, that just a total turning point, a mindset shift about what it is to be a business owner and what it is that a business owner should be doing day to day. It just opened my world to my eyes to the world of outsourcing, of using virtual assistants, of creating systems for my own businesses and actually getting myself out of the way. And it started me on a path of self-discovery, which ended up me launching my own company on the subject, almost, systems and outsourcing. And as a result, have helped thousands of business owners to get other people to do their work for them. So first of all, thanks very much for writing the book. Brilliant timing that you did it. So thank you. So firstly, that leads me seamlessly onto my first question, which is all about, you didn't obviously have the book Life Leverage like I did to make that mindset shift. So, and in your new book Opportunity, you talk about the story about how you went from being an artist to meeting Mark Homey, your business partner, building a successful property business and beyond. So my question is this: how did you get that mindset shift? How did you figure out what it means to be a business owner to enable you to scale and grow your businesses without having Life Leverage as that sort of guide, if you like? And following on from that, what advice can you give to other people who are stuck with those self-limiting beliefs that they really need to do everything themselves?
Probably retrospectively, Steve, because, my dad was a hard-working entrepreneur. And back in the day when I was reading books in 2006, it was all about, takes 10 years to be an overnight success, but you got to hustle and grind and outwork everybody else. And then looking back, I realized I should have got a VA quicker. I should have outsourced my admin quicker. And you get to a point where you get a bit of a busy fool, and you sort of only really feel like you've been productive if you've been busy. But often it's better just to do one or two key result area tasks or income generating tasks and take the rest of the day off. Because, we should never let the menial get in the way of the meaningful, and we should let go to grow. So I definitely had this sort of chaotic couple of years where I was wearing working hard like a badge of honor. I was so proud to outwork everyone. But I was doing all my own admin, all my own DMs, all my own emails, all my own messages, all my own landing page builds, everything myself. Website builds, website copy, writing books, writing the seminars, running the seminars, I was doing everything. And you get to a point where you can't do anymore. And you just become less productive, less effective, and less efficient. So Mark and myself hired my mum, then his mum. Then we hired our first non-family staff member, just part-time, doing our bookkeeping. And, each one of them, we paid $5 or $6 grand a year. And we actually got a lot of admin done, and it freed us so we could do sales and marketing and strategy and vision and collaborations and partnerships and networking. And it only took that to wake us up to the fact, wait a minute, it's such a false economy hiring for staff, when actually, if you hire someone, you can liberate yourself to do income generating tasks. So I'd say it took me a year or two of being really busy and doing everything and getting a bit overwhelmed. to then finally get that actually you have to let go to grow. And when you pay someone to do work for you, you're only paying them 1/12 of their salary, 30 days in arrears. You can pay low basic, high commission. You can get, for your first few hires, can be revenue generating staff members that pay for themselves. And then you replace your admin with income generating time. And if you do all of those things, it actually costs you more not to hire staff.
Yeah. I was going to ask this question later, but it sort of fits in really nicely now. And this is, again, an opportunity to talk about this, and it leads on exactly from what you've just been talking about. And that is about, I think you recommend working around 3 hours a day, like you just mentioned, is a good goal to go for. And I think that, you know, myself, and I'm sure lots of people listening to this, they sort of maybe look in and go, yeah, that's all right for you to say, you know, you've got this business, it's making money, you can afford to pay staff, you know, but I'm in the beginning and I need to create, like you just mentioned then, creating the courses, doing the seminars, writing the copy, doing the emails, doing the DMs, all that sort of stuff. And I think that, like, when you're in those very initial stages, the first year or two, and you're almost making your business, you're making the assets, you're building all of that knowledge that you can then go, okay, now I can try and get someone else to sort of take over that. So is that a reality, do you think, right from the offset? If you could do it all again and you started from zero, would you still do it with 3 hours a day, or would you, okay?
Yeah, it's actually much easier now. Yeah, people could say to me, it's all right for me because of A, B, and C. But when I started, you couldn't get VAs everywhere, and you couldn't pay them, you know, a few dollars or $10 or $20 an hour. You couldn't get people to repurpose your content, do your video and audio editing for you anywhere near as easily as you can now. So back in my day, and I know I'm sounding like a bit of an old man here, but back in my day, you know, all the VAs and the outsourcing was just starting to become a thing. And most people, when they thought about hiring, thought about, you know, full-time staff was your option, really. But now you can go on people per hour, Upwork, onlinejobs.ph. There's a whole plethora of all these outsourcing and VA websites. Obviously, it's what you do, Steve. And it's a simple equation. Work out your income generating time, which is your monthly sales divided by your monthly hours. That might be £50 an hour, 100, 200, 500 pounds an hour, or £30 an hour, whatever it is. Anything that costs less than £30 an hour should be outsourced. And anything that brings you in less than £30 an hour should be outsourced. And then that gets rid of all the tasks that bring your average down. And then you can focus on sales and marketing and partnerships and all the things that are £500 tasks. So it's actually easier now than it's ever been.
Again, following on from that, I think, which I think fits in nicely, is about, okay, so you convinced me that it's a good thing to do to get help, but there's then, okay, how? So how do you delegate and how do you let go? And I think, again, in opportunity, you talk about the parenting as an example of this, about this helicopter parenting, where you're basically breathing down your kids' necks and living their lives for them and preventing them from ever making mistakes. And actually what you need to do is to let them grow up, let them be themselves. And your job is to raise them, not to live their lives for them. And do you think the same analogy can be put in for business? And how can the fear of people making mistakes on your time, obviously it's your name above the door, you know, when something goes wrong, then, you know, how do you get over that fear, and how do you help your team? Because obviously you now have managers that have to do the same thing. How do you help them to grow and to delegate more and let people make mistakes?
One, you have to have a clear vision. If you have a vision that's greater than you, then you will endure the short-term challenges along the way to move towards that vision. If you have no vision and you delegate something and someone messes it up, you'll just take it off them and do it yourself and get rid of them or get annoyed by them. But if you have a grander vision, so my vision is to help as many people on this planet start and scale their business and get a better financial education. That vision transcends me. It transcends my community, my country, my continent, even transcends the globe maybe one day. So I'm therefore more enduring of short-term issues and problems and just accept them as part of it, because I know where we're going long-term. So if you look at the downsides of taking work back, not letting go, micromanaging, you know, berating people and all the things that we all struggle with as entrepreneurs, if you look at the downsides of them because you're focused on the upside of your vision, then you'll see the upsides of letting them crack on, letting them make mistakes. You know, if you let someone make a mistake, they learn way better than if you tell them not to make that mistake. You say to your children, don't touch that, don't touch that, don't touch that, don't touch that. They touch it, they burn themselves. That's the best. Let's go burn yourself. Then you won't do it again. And it's kind of the same with your staff. In a way, the best way that they learn from the mistake is to make the mistake. So actually, you're kind of in a good position from a growth perspective to let them make some mistakes. But therefore, you have to have a non-perfectionist mentality. But no one is perfect. But too many people are, they have this perfectionism curse. Therefore, they never start, which is why I wrote Start Now, Get Perfect Later. The next thing is you've got to get your ego out of the way. Oh, well, no one can do this as good as me. Well, actually, someone could do it better than you. And by the way, if you're doing 10 things not very well, then 10 people can do those 10 different things way better than you, even if you're good at those 10 things. So get out of your way to go. Steve's better at systems and outsourcing and automation. So, I'll hire Steve for that. My business partner, Mark Holmes, is better at contracts and legals and tactical stuff and financials. He can do that. Rob's good at strategy, vision, ranting, speaking. Let him do that. So you put good people in the roles, and then you find that they pay for themselves. Whereas when you try and do them all, you do them all really badly. I've had a day like that today, Steve. Just too many things in my diary. And so I was late for the last meeting, and then I had to finish it early. I was 3 minutes late for this one. And, I'm sort of, when you're starting, you're like, oh, Rob, how are we getting on? I'm like, get on with it. And, because I'm doing too much. We all have days like that. That's, one of the reasons why I'm speaking so fast. Relax, Rob. It's all good. It's a beautiful day.
We got time.
We have got time. So let me summarize then. People can do the things that you're doing better than you. People can do it cheaper than you. People like doing it more than you. And then you're free to do the things that you love to do, that you're good at, that are high value tasks. Now, you need to train people. You need to guide people. You need to let people fail. You need to onboard people. You need to give them systems and processes and manuals and direction and guidance and a bit of free reign and autonomy and progression. And too many people go, oh, yeah, I want an outsourcer. I want to pay $6 a year and I want them to be a legend and do everything for me now. And they have completely unrealistic expectations. I've had a VA for 15 years. He's a legend, but I work with him for a lot. Still give him feedback to this day. But ultimately, you have to let go to grow.
Yeah, totally. I think the idea, I don't know why people have this strange conception about what a VA is or what they isn't or aren't. Because ultimately, there's just a person who's looking for a job and you're going to give them a job. And no matter where that person's based in the world, they're going to need nurturing, training. They're going to need, like you said, make their own mistakes to be able to actually grow as an individual and become more valuable. So I don't know why people have this mindset that for some reason this person's going to arrive and be able to do everything under the sun for, like you say, £4 or £5 an hour. So anyway, I agree with you. Cool. So one thing you picked up on there was perfectionism, and I think that most business owners are guilty of this. Either at some time or definitely at the beginning, and you want it all to be perfect before you launch, And I read a great book by Pat Flynn called Will It Fly, and that sort of kicked me up the ass to actually get my first course ever out the door and just let the public decide if it was any good. But I guess I'm going back there now. Just as you know, I'm writing a book at the moment. I did your book writing course, which is great, by the way. A little plug there for you. But I've got this fear that it's basically it's almost the not the biography, but it's all the course content. It's all my framework. It's everything I've created over the past 3-4 years. And I'm sort of putting it into a format that hopefully will reach more people because I want to help and serve more people. But there's this fear that I haven't figured it all out yet, that, I'm a long way off to being that successful dream business owner that I aspire to be. And my fear is that I'll release this to the world now, and it won't be a finished. It's not going to be like a traction book, which is basically the entrepreneur operating system. That's what I want to create, but my own one of them. But I'm not quite got to the end yet. So, should I wait, or should I just get what I've got there out there, but know that I might even change my idea on some of the stuff I now put out there and add to it later?
Well, if you said you're a bit of a perfectionist, and that tells me that the best thing you could probably do is put your as finished as it can be work out there. So I think I can help you with this. I wrote my new book, Opportunity, and literally within 3 days of it being live, I had about another 40 to 50 pages of content that I could have put into the book. And then I did a couple of clubhouse rooms on the subject and promoted my book. And I had another really awesome, in my mind, awesome bonus section on turning opportunity into income and all the ways to monetize opportunity. So within a week of the book being live, I could have another 80 or 90 pages in. But I had to launch it to find that out and do the clubhouse rooms and promote the book and talk about the book a lot to find that out. So in reality, no work is ever really finished. But if you don't ever get it live or launched, it's never finished. So what I'm doing is working with my writer and publisher, and in the next run of printing, I'll have an updated version. So, or I could do a version 2 or an edition 2, or I could do an add-on 75, 80 page download that people get free with the book. It's far better to launch it, get it out there, and then add to it than it is to always wait for it to be finished to get it out there, because it will never be finished. Never.
Yeah. I thought you might say that. I thought that might help. It might help some of the listeners as well, because I'm sure there's loads of people in a similar situation. Cool. So you talk about opportunity, and I wanted to actually touch on something there in opportunity, which is about getting yourself out there more. And it's sort of like I said earlier on, that life leverage came at it was perfect timing for me. It was when I needed to read that book. And opportunity, likewise, has come with that moment. So 2021 for me is my year for getting myself out there. It's launching my podcast. It's getting my YouTube channel going properly. It's getting myself out there on social media. But with that comes that the criticism. People will actually criticize you. And I've experienced this a little bit. I'm not got out there as much as you by a long shot. But actually, there's something I wanted to pick up with you. And I spoke to you about this beforehand, so I know that you know I'm going to ask you this. But one of my audience in my group actually commented negatively about me doing this interview with you. They don't know our backstory. They don't know what the value that you've given me over the years. They're coming from their own place. And so I gave my opinion, but I didn't sort of defend either way. I've got no opinion on what they think. But I wanted to share that with you, because I know that you talk about actually embracing that criticism, about actually responding to it in a sensible way is the way to deal with it. So if you like, I will read that to you now. So it was, I don't agree with the way he promotes and trains to the gullible and vulnerable. That's it.
So is there a question in there?
So the question is, how would you respond to it? And I'm sure you've heard that sort of things before. And does that make you feel like, because obviously that's not what you do. That's not what you're about. So does that make you feel like, it would make me feel really, really bad about how has that message got out there? What am I doing wrong? That's what it made me feel. I wonder if you get that, or if you something else, and how would you respond to that?
Well, that comment is not a reflection on me. That's a reflection on them. Like, you would never hear me say of anyone in my communities or anyone that might be a consumer of my content that they're gullible. I find that quite a distasteful way to talk about a person or a group of people. So yeah, it's not a comment you'd hear me say. Yeah. And I've never put a gun to someone's head to listen to my podcast. I've never put anyone in an arm bar to do one of my courses. Hey, I'd be much richer if I did. So when they say vulnerable, what does that mean? So, that comment is a reflection of that individual and the environment they're in and the reality they have. So, for example, let's make some assumptions, Steve. Rob, takes advantage of the vulnerable. Well, how do we define vulnerable? Do we define vulnerable as someone's on their deathbed? Do we define vulnerable as someone who is in consumer debt but wants to spend $5 a month on my supporter program, or is maybe in debt and wants to do a course? I mean, I haven't sold a course in goodness knows how long. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But I was £50,000 in consumer debt when I did Chris Howard's suite of courses, and I put them on a brand new credit card, and now I'm a multi-millionaire. So maybe I was vulnerable back then because I got myself into debt. I don't know. Because sometimes when you're in debt, you're motivated. or you're desperate like I was. My dad had just had a massive nervous breakdown. You could say I was vulnerable. So that person's making a really general statement about people who are vulnerable and people who are gullible. But how do you even define that? As far as I'm concerned, Steve, if someone wants to change and wants to improve their life, then I will help them and I will give them content, and I have products and services that they can purchase. If they don't, I'm not interested. Because, if I'm trying to force something on someone who doesn't want what I've got, well, then maybe you could make some statement about me. But why is someone gullible investing in themselves? I'd say someone is gullible buying a 100 grand car and it'd be worth 30 grand in 3 years. It's just, do you see what I mean? They're such vague statements that they don't really mean anything. And I had a guy, Jamie Stevens, call him Jay, but you'll know him on social media as Jamie. He just sent me a message saying he smashed it this year. He's got enough money in the bank to pay for a year's worth of living expenses. He's uplifted his property portfolio by 180 grand. And he said, at first, when I signed up to your mastermind, I had a wobble. I wanted to get a refund. I had a wobble. And he said that I said to him, give it some time, just crack on and get done. And apparently there was a couple of expletives that I put in there. Basically, JFDI, commit. And he hasn't looked back. And a client of mine, Fiona Crossley, we set a goal together to have 25 properties in a year. And then the lockdown happened. And she had all sorts of wobbles. And I mentored and coached her. And she probably wouldn't mind me saying, at times, I was almost giving her therapy. 26 properties she bought in the lockdown. She had vulnerable moments. Jamie had vulnerable moments. I had vulnerable moments. You've probably had vulnerable moments.
I think
I have never taken any money off a 5-year-old cancer child. What does vulnerable and gullible mean? I've never taken money from anyone who, how do you even define gullible? Like, I don't know, a 6-year-old kid you could probably trick. My daughter goes, Daddy, you see that? And I go, yeah. And she goes, made you look, made you stare, made you lose your underwear. Maybe that's gullible, but yeah. These are real people. These are adults. By the way, I'd love to have a chat. I'd love to have a chat with the person. Bring them on. Let's have a chat live.
You never know. They might even watch this and see it. You never know. So
hey, look, I'm not commenting about them. I don't know them. All I'm saying is it reflects on them and their environment. And maybe they're going through some painful times. Maybe they got screwed over by someone who is a little bit more unethical and they're bruised. And then they're looking at other people and assuming they're similar. Wearing a jacket like this, I understand I'm not everyone's cup of tea. But the reason I'm okay with it, Steve, the reason I'm not going to let it stop me do what I do is, one, I have a vision bigger than myself. 2, I've got tens of thousands of people who attest to the good work I've done. 3, for every 1 piece of paid content, I give 1,000 pieces of free content. And 4, I know that it's not a reflection of me, it's a reflection of them.
Cool. Thanks, Rob. All right, this is something that actually came to me yesterday, and it's something that I wasn't sure whether I should cover in this live podcast with you, but I'm going to do it anyway. He seems to be getting on all right, so there you go. So yesterday I actually watched a video with Simon Sinek. I can never remember how to say that name. Anyway, you know who I mean. And he talked about that comparing ourselves to others is the most destructive habit we have. I know this is something you've talked about, and so I thought I'd share this with you. And I think the reason I'm sharing this is because I think other people will be in a similar situation, and I hope by sharing this it will help them. So you see, because of your success and because I admire you, I actually feel quite insecure around you. And I get nervous before we speak, and I'm not normally a nervous person. I can normally hold my own, and I do podcasts. I do live webinars in front of tens of hundreds of people, whatever. No problem until I get on the stage, whatever. But I get nervous. I don't end up booking coaching calls sometimes because I'm thinking, well, maybe the questions I have aren't worthy of your time. I don't want to waste your time with menial things or whatever. I'm booking this podcast. I procrastinated for weeks before hitting that send button. And look, now we're here having a great chat and, brilliant. So I'm telling this because I'm not looking to get confirmation of my worth from you, but I know that other people, if I feel like this, and other people surely will as well. And I'm sure that you've had conversations with people about this before. And this sort of thing can really hold people back. I know it's held me back from various things, but I'm quite a stubborn git, and it took me a bit of time, but I still did it. I still pressed that button. So my question is this: how do you help people overcome this very natural but destructive tendency to compare ourselves to others and then judge, are we worthy or not? And have you experienced this in your own life, and how have you cope with it?
Yeah, that's a good question, and could be very deep, Steve. You are a doctor, and in that realm, I would be your student and you would be my teacher. And there'd be other areas of life where I would be your student and you would be my teacher. I just happen to be able to teach you in entrepreneurship because I've been doing it longer and I'm a bit more experienced and it's my flow. So in reality, you and I we're not unequal. We're different. We're equal because we're both human beings. We're both worthy of love. We're both worthy of praise and recognition. We both have our place in society, but we do different things. And I first studied this in Adlerian psychology, which talked about society as it's kind of been built, is hierarchical, where, the president's got all the power and then it all kind of cascades down, the boss and the employee, as if the person in an elevated position of power or authority is better. They're not, they're just different. And Adlerian psychology takes what is vertical and turns it horizontal. 10,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago, however many years ago, we were probably more equal within a tribe because we all needed each other to survive. And you make shoes, and they've got an ironmonger and a butcher and a hunter, and the mother, looks after the children and blah, blah, blah. And, we didn't have a pay difference of tens of thousands of %, and we didn't have a social status that was way elevated. It started to evolve over time. So what's helped me and what will help you and what will help everyone is, in areas where you've honored, you have greatness, that I would be your student. In areas that I've honored, where I have greatness, you happen to be my student. And we're two people who are trying our best to be good, useful human beings, and we're required in society equally. Okay, so some of us have more social media followings, and some of us get paid more, and some of us are earlier in our journey, and some of us are later in our journey. Some of us are better at relaxing, and some of us have got wealth in the form of our relationships or our children or our health, and others have got the wealth in forms of money and business. We all have wealth stored in our own forms of value. And that's really helped me. And it helps in one of two ways, because naturally humans tend to go, oh, I'm better, or oh, I'm worse. And sometimes you're talking to someone and you think, like this critic, I could go, oh, yeah, well, what are you talking about? Critics, that's kind of like a low level role in society. But actually, no, a critic is no lower than me. A critic has a place to keep people like me in check. Because when someone says, oh, this guy preys on the vulnerable and gullible, well, actually, they're not really criticizing me. They're more criticizing certain people in my industry. But what it does is remind me to make sure I look after people and I do good work. And if they're someone, like, I'll give you an example. We've had a client who keeps buying off of us, and we keep refunding because we believe they are not fully mentally well. And we just keep refunding them, and they keep finding ways to buy from us. Now, who does that? We launch a new product, they go buy them, and oh, here we go again, we refund. And, because I do see that person as vulnerable and I do the right thing. Now, that person isn't better or worse than me. That person is different. So when we have an Adlerian, we're all equal, horizontal, not vertical view of humanity. And we realize we're equally valuable. I met Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he's a lot shorter than me, and he dyes his hair, and he's kind of balding here. And he seemed a little bit awkward when I met him, just like I was when I met him. And I just realized he's just a normal guy as well. And I put him up there like some superhero, 6'10" tall, and all that, when actually he's 5'10". So that's really helped me not subordinate or elevate myself. And then when we're all equal, we have gratitude, we have balance, we value ourselves, we value others, we learn from everyone, we teach equally as we learn. And we have this good energy about us that's not cocky and arrogant, but it's not overly subordinating and vulnerable and insecure either. And, you know, I could go more and more into detail of that, but on the superficial level, that's really helped me.
Thank you. I realize we're tight for time, so I'm just going to ask you a couple of final questions, if that is all right, and then we'll close up. We'll wrap up, as I think they say in the trade. So you've asked this question many a time, and I love it, so I'm going to ask the same to you. Who do you think will be a great next guest on this podcast?
Gino Winkman would be good, of the author of Traction, the author of Scaling Up, Vern Harnish. And I interviewed Nolan Bushnell, who was the guy that first hired Steve Jobs. For your specific niche, there'd be 3 great guests, and I reckon you could get them.
All right. I'll get on the case. Cool. So the title of this podcast is Systemize Your Success. What does success mean to you?
Success means being useful in society, helping as many people as you can have a better life in your area of expertise or value, and doing your absolute best to be more, to do more, and to give more, and not measure that externally or compared to anyone else other than where you were a year ago.
Lastly, do you believe you can systemize your success, and why?
Of course, anything is systemizable, except, intimacy isn't systemizable or leverageable. But processes, software, staffing, scaling, it's all systemizable. Yeah. So you can't systemize the feeling you get when you do something meaningful. That's still an organic human thing. But most of the rest you can systemize. Yeah. I mean, I don't do any operational work in my companies, and I have multiple companies that make multiple millions of pounds, but I do strategy, vision. I do a lot of building my own personal brand, Steve, but the day-to-day is systemized. Thanks,
Rob. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. And so, you know my backstory, and it's an honor to get you on to my first proper interview on the new podcast. So yeah, thanks very much. Really enjoyed it. Hope you did too.
I also want to say, just before we end the broadcast, I think you're great, Steve. I love working with you. And, I've mentored a lot of people. And so to hear you be vulnerable and say those things, I think I'd sense those. And I always try and balance making you feel comfortable and that I'm accessible to you. But also I'm good at getting it done. So I'm always right. Let's do A, B, C, D, and E, it was very brave of you to say that. And I've definitely felt that around people before, but you don't have any need to feel that around me. I'm just a normal guy. I'm imperfect. I make mistakes. Just good on you for being honest about that. And I enjoyed it.
Cool. Well, yeah, I hope me opening up helped some other people as well. So cool. Thank you very much, Rob. How can they get in contact with you or follow you, or how would you like them to reach out to you? And obviously I've talked about opportunity. Where should they get it? So Disruptive Entrepreneur Podcast, a good place to start. My book Opportunity, you can go to robsbook.club. You can get Audible or paperback, and there are still actually some bonuses up there, some sexy bonuses. Be quick though, because we will be taking them down soon. robsbook.club. Thank you so much for joining me and listening to this episode. I'm well aware there are hundreds of great business podcasts out there, and you chose to listen to this one, and for that I am truly grateful. Hopefully what you heard today took you one step closer to building a successful business so you can share your passion with the world and serve an ever-growing number of people. If you got value out of today's episode, then so will someone else you know. By sharing with others what has helped you along your way, you will grow your influence and be the guy or girl that everybody wants to know.
So please hit the share button right now, and also remember to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss future episodes. It's impossible for me to cover absolutely everything in these podcasts, so please do head over to systemizeyoursuccess.com right now and download the show notes, transcriptions, and some of my best frameworks and systems for free. Thanks again for tuning in and being a part of this amazing community. Until next time, this is Dr. Steve Day, and you've been listening to Systemize Your Success.